So for this video, I'm going to start with the results. These are my Tuscarora crepe myrtle cuttings that I did a couple of weeks ago in another video. That video was basically about fixing the winter damage from your crepe myrtle tree, because a lot of times they die back, and you can get a lot of cuttings off of it too when you've got the suckers that come up from the main plant, and that's where these all came from. So we're going to take a look at these today, see if it's been long enough for them to root. There are some here that I think are just dead, and others that might have actually put on some roots. It feels a little bit early to me, but we will check and we'll see and how it all goes through. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tack on the process that I went through for those cuttings, so you have one complete video that starts with the results first and then the how-to on the back end of that whole video. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to move the camera so you can get a really good look here at these crepe myrtle cuttings as I explore the pots and see how many roots do we have, what rooted, how many crepe myrtles do we have now. Okay, so in each of these pots I was able to get 9 cuttings, so there's a total of 18 cuttings here. Let me go ahead and turn this direction here, and we'll take a look. These look nice and healthy still, doing well, but we do have a couple that obviously have not made it. So there's 2 that did not work out for sure. And we'll look through, and it looks like everything else still is alive, so I'll come back to that here in a second. And then I'm looking in this container here, and I see one here that has lost leaves, but the stem might still be okay. We'll check that in a minute. And then this one right here has definitely not done anything. You can tell that the bottom is kind of soft and mushy, so it is definitely not going to work. Now, before I go through all these, I want to make sure that the soil is nice and loose, so I'm going to give them a little bit of water here. This just helps the cuttings from getting too stressed, loosens up the soil, makes it easier for the roots to come out. All right, so let's go ahead and start right here. This one looks really good. It's got 3 leaves on it. I'm going to just give it a nice little gentle wiggle. And here we go. We got some start of some nice little roots coming right there. That looks pretty decent. So there's one. And we'll go through. I would probably prefer to leave these in longer. This one has not rooted, so I will sit that one back in here. And here's this other. Yeah, it's starting to rot down at the end, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. I don't think that's going to make it. So this other one is a pretty good size cutting, and it's got some good resistance, so I'm going to be very careful pulling this one out. And look at that, we do have some good roots starting to form. These are very, very early roots. Probably I shouldn't be doing this just yet, but I was kind of excited and wanted to kind of see what I had here. So we'll check this one, and it's showing a little bit of rot down here at the end of the stem, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And this, we did that one already, and let's check here. This one's still looking okay-ish, but it doesn't have any roots on it, so we'll slide him back in. Gently pull out this one, and we've got little roots beginning to form right along the stem there. So we've got 3. This one here does not have any roots forming, but it could still potentially do something. So I'm going to take out these extra leaves, remove them, firm everything back up, and slide these cuttings back together again. So we've looked at everything in this container. I've got 3 still to go, and 3 that made it, and a couple that didn't. So that was 3, 3, and 3, which, you know, we're hitting 30% right now on that, but it could be 60%, or actually that would be 67%, I think, if we're doing it accurately. All right, so we took out 2 from this container here, and let me start on this end. And I don't see anything, or do I? I've got a very small one right there and one right there. So let me go ahead and carefully slide this back in here. We want bigger roots than that before we do any transplanting with them. And we'll check this one. This one does not seem to have any, oh, there's one right here. It is starting to form. So we're definitely early on these roots. I probably should give it another 2 weeks before doing all this, but we're already into it now. And this one here has got roots right along the stem right there, beginning. Still a little early, but I'll pull that out. I'll pot those up here in a little while. And this one has got quite a bit of resistance, so I'll just give it a little nice wiggle on it. and it is beginning to form roots too. You see the little white starts of the roots coming out of the stem. But that one's a little early, so I'll put him back. And let me check these guys here in the back. That one's got a little bit of a root forming right here. This one is not looking as good. I can see a lot of rot down here at the bottom. Even though the top of the cutting looks all right, the bottom here does not, I don't think that's going to work. So we'll get rid of that one. And we've got one last cutting to check. And it does not appear ready, but we can put that one back into the container. So basically we ended up here with about 5 crepe myrtles out of the 18 that have confirmed roots, a couple that are about to root and I put back in here. So what we'll do is we'll continue to grow these in the same spot they were in, make sure that I keep them wet so that the soil does not dry out, and hopefully they will start to produce their own roots here in time. And ideally, you do not want to pull these out at this stage. This is just way too early. I was really curious as to what we had here, and I kind of wanted to share with you some of these results. So I've got 5 of them that have roots on them that will pot up into containers. But ideally, you probably want to wait a good 4 weeks at least before checking them like this. Here, I'm probably about 17 to 18 days in, and you can see they're rooting, it's having success, but they're just not quite where I want them to be as far as the roots go. And there we go. I've got 5 of those Tuscarora crepe myrtles. They are definitely not ready to go in the ground at this point. They will need more time to grow those root systems. But they are all started rooting. These 5 here have rooted well. They're just a little bit early. And these others here, they still have some more time to potentially root. So hopefully what I've done today doesn't disturb them too much and that they'll continue to grow on and create some really good roots. So, but really, you know, 5 crepe myrtle trees, that's not a bad result. Remember, we took 18 total cuttings here. So we're just a little under 30% on that, with the potential to come up here to 67% perhaps. We definitely lost, looks like 6 cuttings out of that 18, so we'll get a max of 12 on this batch of cuttings here. So I'm very happy to get these 5 new Tuscarora crepe myrtle trees rooted. They're a little early, probably should have been more like 4 to 6 weeks instead of 17 to 18 days, but I still got some roots. So that's really good. And they should do fine in these smaller containers until the roots start to form out the bottom, and then I need to transplant them up into a larger pot size. These here will continue to keep wet with a little bit of mist on the leaves. I'm just using a little spritz bottle each day, and then making sure that the soil stays moist so that the roots can actually start to grow and that they don't dry out at all. So the next segment of this video is where I actually took the cuttings. So go ahead and take a look on that if you're interested in making your own crepe myrtle trees from cuttings. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the appropriately sized cuttings from here. We're going to trim them down a little bit. Then we'll dip them into rooting hormone like this, Hormone 3. You can use some other types. You really don't need a concentration quite this strong. You can go down to a lower level of the IBUA, indole butyric acid. That's a mouthful to say. And then we'll dip them into this mixture here, which is a half and half blend of sand and coir. Now, coir is made from coconut instead of peat. It's a very good substitute. So I highly recommend it. I've been using it for almost all my cuttings for the last 1.5 years or so. I do keep my Hormone 3 into a different container right there so I don't contaminate the main container. I take out of it and put into here, and I just use what is in here until it's used up. And then I can clean this out and start again. Okay, so let's move this aside for a moment. We'll get to that here very soon. And we're going to take a look at our cuttings. I am purposely trying to stay in the shade so that these things do not dry out too quickly. And we're going to just take a look and try to size them up. You see a cutting like this is a very good cutting, but I don't really want the floppy part at the very top of it right here. So I'm going to just pinch that off and trim off the lower branches. And you'll see here that there's a node right there and a node right there. I'm going to take what you call a nodal cutting on these, just like this, and that is just below the node. So the node is typically where you get the cells that form growth for the leaves or the roots. And so that's the part that we want to start developing the roots on. I'm going to leave the smaller leaves up here and pull off the extras so that we reduce the transpiration happening. You want to make sure as much moisture stays in the cutting as possible, and that's why we reduce the leaves. If they're smaller leaves, they're probably better. If you put too many on, it's going to sap resources from the rest of the cutting. And so then all we need to do is carefully dip this into your mixture. You don't want to get any on your hands if you can help it. If you do, wash them off really well. And then we're going to take this and we're going to put it into our already wet medium. I went ahead and I took care of that. And one thing I forgot to get is my little pencil that I use for a dibber here. So instead, I'm just going to stick my finger in a little bit. I'm going to shove that cutting in just like this. And then I'm going to tuck in the soil around it so it can be nice and tight. You don't want to leave air pockets around your cutting. You want to have that soil medium right up against the plant. And we'll do this for all of the cuttings we've got here. I may not use all this material because, to be honest, I don't need that many crepe myrtles going around. A few more would be nice. I don't need, I don't know, this could probably be 20 or so. But I will probably be happy if I get about 5 or 10 to root, but I think we could potentially have a lot more than that. Now this cutting here, it didn't trim off as well, so it's going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to go under this node right there, and I'm going to take off some extra leaves. So we have a 2-leaf cutting. And crepe myrtles don't actually need the rooting hormone a lot of the time, but I like to use it to kind of increase the odds of success. And sometimes they have a much stronger root system overall that you can grow from. So I'll do the same, and you can see the process here. This is the 3rd one right now. We'll do the same thing with it, and we'll continue with all the rest of the cuttings, and we'll fit a bunch of cuttings into one little container. I could probably get 9 cuttings in here comfortably. Now the thickness of the cutting can help too. Sometimes these thicker ones here have more resources which allow you to make a much stronger cutting, but because of that, I've got bigger leaves. So I'm going to take off this leaf right here and just leave a single leaf on it. You'll note that I am right below a node right here. I'm going to trim that just a little better so I'm closer to that node. And my pruners did not prune as well as I would have liked, but that did create a wounding situation. And sometimes when you do wounding on a plant, it creates an area around that cambium layer where you can actually have more cells happen, and then more roots will happen because of that. So we're going to take this one and we will go ahead and pop it in here with these others. While I was off camera, I put the dibber in here. And I always find when you're doing a container, you want to go from the farthest area and work your way back. You don't want to have to be working in the center. So just a little organizational note there. So as far as the size of the cutting, I am taking somewhere between 4 and 6 inches or so. And I'm just judging that on based of where it kind of looks like it would naturally grow well. The tighter your nodes are together, the greater the odds are for success because there's more cells in those areas. But you'll note this is a pretty thick stem off of that, so I think it will actually do quite well on this one here. So we'll go ahead and pop that in with these others. We've got some really good cutting material here, so I'm optimistic that we'll get some decent roots happening off of some of these cuttings. Anytime you do plant propagation, you're playing the odds. So you may or may not get everything that you're hoping to get. It may work great and have a lot of success, and a lot of that is not your fault at all, as much as it is the plant's tendencies. Some plants tend to root well from cuttings and some don't. So my recommendation is just experiment as much as you can and learn from each experiment. So there we have 9, and we've got another container to do another 9. So I'll go ahead and pop in my holes like I was talking about earlier so you can see that. You can see they're nice, neat, and organized in it. And we'll go through and make the rest of our cuttings. So I've got my 2 containers all fixed up here with a total of 18 cuttings in them, 9 in each container. And all I'm gonna do now is just give them an extra dose of water. That way it allows whatever medium we have in there to go ahead and kind of push up against the stems a little bit better. So just in case there's any air pockets that I might have missed when I was pushing it down around the stem. So that's really all there is to it right now. It's going to probably take them 6 to 8 weeks or so to actually put on some roots. And what I look for when we do root is that there are some roots coming out the holes in these pots. So that's one way to do it. You can look back at the other video that I did a couple of years ago about doing crepe myrtle cuttings. A lot of people have watched that video, and hopefully it's helped some folks here and there. So when you do cuttings, it's really important that you don't stress out the cuttings any more than necessary. So that's why I always recommend putting them in dappled shade, where they get a little bit of light, but they're not getting the intense summer heat or spring heat from the sun. And these are actually going to go on a covered porch area where it doesn't get any shade. This side of the house gets a pretty good amount of sunlight in the afternoon, so I don't want to leave them right here. But the typical spot I would love to leave them at our past house was under a Japanese maple that had gotten pretty large. It allowed a lot of light to come through when needed, but not so much that it was detrimental to the cuttings. So look for a good site, a good spot to keep it in. Make sure you check them every day. You want to check and make sure that they are not drying out, that the medium is nice and moist, that if you do have a little spritz bottle or something and you want to bring it around and spritz the leaves, that helps as well, because it prevents the leaves from sending moisture out through transpiration. So you definitely want to be on top of things when you're doing it. That's one great thing about mist systems when you've got plant propagators who have developed those mist systems, that it kind of keeps it on autopilot for you a little bit more than just doing a few cuttings here and there like I tend to do. So I hope that kind of guided you through the whole process. If you have any questions, concerns, or thoughts that you want to share, or maybe some tips or something that I could do better, feel free to leave something in the comments, and like and subscribe to follow more with Growing the Home Garden. And I'm going to get out of this rainstorm that is about to fall on my head. I'll catch you next time.